Okay, replaced my blown hoses on the loader and was able to raise it back up. But before I raised it up, what I did was I took out the fill plug. I had a pan underneath here, and I took out the fill plug, and I used the solution from my parts washer, my parts cleaner. I figure that's a solvent that should do a good job of cleaning out the bad grease, the bad oil and dirt and everything that might have been in that gearbox. So I flushed it with that. So now I'm going to install the 2 new seals, and hopefully those will go in without too much of a fight. This would be a lot easier to do if the shaft wasn't in there, but it is. So I was reading in the manual for this cutter that under the troubleshooting section, it talked about seal leakage, and it talked about if this seal is leaking, that one of the things you should check is you should check the amount of end play in the shaft. Doesn't feel like there's much in there at all, which is good. If you have excessive end play, if the shaft is allowed to move like this, in and out, then what they recommend you do is on the top of this shaft, there is a nut, and there's a locking tab, or depending on, there might be a little metal stake that's driven in to keep that nut from moving. That has to be removed. So if you get the locking tab, you bend the tab out of the way so you can adjust that nut, tighten that nut, and actually take up the end play. It actually affects the lash of the gears, the bevel gears, as they wear. The 2 bevel gears, as they wear, will allow the shafts to be able to move in and out. So if you have the type that has the little metal stake driven in, you actually have to break the nut that's on there and put a brand new nut on. So now I can put the seals in. So the question is, which way do I put the seal in? Well, I want this side facing the oil side. So this first seal I'm going to put in has to go in this way. Put a little bit on the lip of the seal, and now I'm going to just put a little bit on here. Yeah, I'm going to have too much of a hard time. I've got to hit that squarely, and this is in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with something. I'm going to come up with some kind of a cure for that problem. I'm going to have to, might even have to make a sleeve. Okay, so I got some old bearings that I keep these near my shop press for various little jobs like this. Okay, and I need to make a stack. I mean, sure, I could cut a piece of stock, I could turn it down to diameter on the lathe, I could bore out the center, so that, I mean, I could make a special, and then after doing all that, I do this job, and then I don't need that again for God knows how long. So instead, I'm going to take these 3 bearings, stack them like this, and I got this old piece that I use for pressing stuff all the time, and I practice some TIG welding on it. Anyways, use this, set this on here and give it a bash, and hopefully that'll set it. Now I got to try and hold this all together while I'm doing this, make my life a little bit easier. I'm going to just use some duct tape, and I'm going to tape these 3 bearings together. Alright, so it doesn't look pretty, but it doesn't have to really stay together that long. There we go. That's been more difficult than I thought it would be. Well, now I've done it. I managed to roll the lip on this seal. And I'm probably going to have the same problem with the next seal. I'm going to end up destroying these seals. If I keep pushing that in, that whole lip's going to like 90% of it already is already folded out. I'm not going to be able to get that to go back in. The lips folded over on itself. If the seal isn't already ruined, it's certainly going to be ruined, and it's not going to work. It's not going to hold oil. So I really need to install these seals with the shaft out and then install the shaft. So I'm going to do what I was trying to avoid doing originally, which is I'm going to pull the gearbox. Okay, the gearbox is held to the rest of the brush cutter with these 4 bolts. Bolts that come in through the bottom here and have nuts on the top. But I'm actually taking out these bolts right here. There's 6 of them that hold this part right here to the gearbox. I think if I take these 6 out, that I can get this whole unit right here to drop out, which will negate me having to go through the trouble of trying to take the PTO shaft off, because this is not a quick disconnect here. There's a bolt going through it, which is probably seized. The slip clutch here also has a bolt going through it, and it also has, looks like maybe a clamping action. I'm just thinking that that's going to be a bear to get that off of that shaft. So if I can keep this all together, I will. Right now, it's not, I've got all the bolts except for one here loosened. So let me just loosen this one and see. I got the 3 bolts on the back side completely removed. I have these loosened, and this isn't moving yet. Let me give it a whack. Might even be the shaft right here that's keeping it. That should move a little bit. I would have expected that to drop out right there. Looks like I might have to take the whole gearbox out as an assembly. There we go. The only good thing I could foresee from this, having to take this out and take it all apart, is I can make sure it's a lot cleaner than it was. There's still a lot of mud coming out of there, for lack of a better term. Can I bring a rag over here? I think I did. Hope I did. Oh man, that stuff smells horrible. I'm worried that's going to drop. Are you kidding me? Somehow managed to get this hook stuck in here. There we go. Alright. It doesn't fit through that hole? That doesn't make sense. There we go. Oh. I'm tempted to just see if I can tap on this shaft and get it to move in and see if the seal will fold back in over itself, but I doubt that. And I can't take this shaft all the way out, so I got to take this right here. These 6 bolts right here will allow me to take this whole assembly off of here. Alright, so yesterday the video card and the camera filled up. So all I did before I quit was I managed to get that whole gear case. We threw it on the wagon and ran it over here with the, pulled it over here with the ATV close to the house so I could use my impact wrench to get these bolts out. It was 6 bolts here, and that allowed me to get this unit right here off of the rest of the gearbox. So it's a little more manageable. So now what I want to do is hopefully I can put this in the press and lightly press on this end and push this whole assembly out of here, and then reevaluate how much damage I did to those seals, whether or not I can salvage those seals or if I'm going to have to trash them. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on there and that's not budging. So I'm going to stop. I don't like it. Here's what I initially thought, which apparently is not correct, which is I thought that this shaft was pressed into the inner race of this lower bearing, and that this lower bearing was pressed into the housing, and that by pushing on this end of the shaft in that direction that I would be able to get this shaft to push out of this upper bearing and come out this end with the lower bearing still on it. But since I put all that pressure on it, quite a bit of pressure, and it didn't budge at all, I'm now thinking that's not the case. So the question is, how is this supposed to come out? So it's quite possible that the proper way to take this out is to remove this nut and remove this gear and then push the shaft in that direction and have it come out the top. Which, if that were the case, then it would mean the shaft gets inserted during reassembly, gets inserted in this direction, which would spare the seals, because you'd be pushing in the direction that the seal lips are supposed to be pointing. So if you think about the seal lips being at an angle like this normally, if I'm pushing from this direction, okay, then that makes sense that they're going to just open up like this more to accommodate the shaft. Whereas if I try and push from the other direction, which is essentially what I did by trying to force the seals on this way, I caused those lips to fold over on themselves like this, and they're now like this. And the worst part is they're not even like that around the whole shaft, they're just like partially that way. And I tried pushing it back in, and there's no chance of that. So you can see the seal material is pushed up and out over here. It's just looking really bad. And I can't push that back in. Anything that I try and put on there to push that seal back in is going to just damage that seal material. So even if I get it to go back in, by the time I push it back through, it's going to be toast. Believe me, this hurts me a lot more than it does for you guys to have to watch this. Yeah, it was the right decision. That seal's been destroyed. Haha. Spring had popped off also when it rolled. There was no way, even if I had managed to somehow push that seal back into position, the spring was already off. So, good thing I'm doing a do-over. Oh, and you guys ought to give me credit. I could have hid all this. Could have just edited all this out. You never would have known how bad I screwed up. Alright guys, so I'm back to work on the Bush Hog gearbox here. Well, the Bush Hog, period. But of course the gearbox is the hold up. I had destroyed the new seal. In full disclosure, I had destroyed 2 new seals. Anyways, I now have ordered some good quality SKF seals. Not that the other seals weren't good quality. I just, you know, figured since I had delayed this far, I might as well just wait for a longer shipment from eBay and get a better deal. So I got a pretty good deal on these seals. So, interestingly enough, the other thing I learned about seal installation was apparently if you tap this style of seal in on any application, keep this in mind, that there is a danger of tapping it hard enough so that this little spring that's on the back of the seal, there's a little ring of metal right here that is actually a continuous round spring that actually is what puts tension on this lip. It helps the seal work. Okay, well, that little spring, you can take that off pretty easily. You never want to do that. But the point is that if you are tapping it in this way, what can happen is you can actually pop that spring off. And what will happen is you'll have no idea that it's happened, unless you happen to be working on a gearbox where you can look in from the other side. But no, the bearing's going to be in the way probably, so you're not going to see it, period. And you're not going to know that that spring is off, and that's going to be in there, and that seal's not going to be doing a very good job. So I just wanted to pass that little pearl of wisdom along. How do I know this? Well, because when I took out the old seal, one of the old seals, the spring, which was a brand new spring because it was a brand new seal, was laying inside. That is my little word to the wise today. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to reinstall this. I want to install this new seal, and I want to do it in a way so that I don't have to bang on it, which causes the problems of not being able to evenly ensure that it's going in perfectly straight, and also the potential problem of the spring falling off or deforming the metal frame here, which probably shouldn't drop the seal either. But anyways, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I got a liberal coating of grease on this shaft, so that the seal will want to slide down and have less of a tendency to want to fold over on itself, which is what I had happened on the first one. And B, I want to find some way that I can actually press this in. Now I know I can just put this in my shop press. I can rig something up so that I can put this in the shop press and do exactly what I want to do. My only thing is I've got to be able to push on this. So what I want to do is I want to find a sleeve that I can put over here that will allow me to push down evenly on this thing in the press. And if I don't have a sleeve that I like the dimensions of, I will make one in the lathe. Alright, so here's my setup. I've got my big giant parallels on there, so because the bevel gear doesn't quite fit between these this space right here on the H frame. So that'll take care of that. And up here I've put a liberal coating of grease on the area where the seal has to get by. This has got a chamfer to it, so that makes it easy to start the seal. Now for spacers, I have these big giant spacers I got from somewhere a while back. I just grabbed them because I knew I could get them for next to nothing. You know, chances are they came out of an old machine shop. That's where a lot of my picks end up taking place. If I had to guess what these were, these might be spacer plates for a really big horizontal boring machine or something like that. I don't know. But it turns out the ID on these is like almost perfect to allow the pressing force to be right on that outside edge where that wall is. where the wall of the seal is. And I have several of them that I can stack and create a sandwich that will get me high enough to almost, I mean, it actually does, it just clears the top of this. The problem is now if I put a plate on top of here and I press, I'm going to immediately hit the top of the shaft here. So I need something just to go just above that. And I don't have any more of these plates, but I do have a large bearing. So that's going to let me put a plate on top of here now and push this. And I'll only be able to push down pretty much the thickness of this bearing before my plate's going to hit the top of this shaft and I'm out of business again. But at least I can see if this is going to work and get this thing started straight without destroying the seal. I wish this would fit in my arbor press. Alright, almost touched down now, so I'm just going to, I can see that the space between the bottom of this plate and the top here is a little uneven. So I'm just going to shift this a little bit to see if I can't get it to even out. It looks better. I got to get a flashlight so I can look underneath there in that gap better. Alright, I just spent about 20 minutes on the milling machine and created this. It ain't pretty. The reason why it's got the weird shape to it is because this is actually part of another part that I had made for an old Craftsman sander a while back, and then I ended up deciding not to use it. So it turned out the board that I had put in that part was the perfect size for this job. So all I had to do, there were already some slotted holes around this area here. So all I had to do was cut it away from the rest of the part, and then I didn't feel like mounting it on the rotary table just to get a nice radius on here. So I just did some straight cuts, turned it in the vise, cut, turned it in the vise and cut it out so that now it'll fit, and that'll be my little adapter to help press that down inside there. Alright, making contact. Son of a gun. That seal folded over again. You gotta be kidding me. This is just unbelievable. Ruined. Again. Man, I just noticed that it even went as far as to tear the seal on this side. So, that brand new seal that I waited a week for it to come in is junk.